Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are building authentication. This is our third episode of, it's hard to come up with one name. We're just building and recording as we go. Anyway, sorry, I had already started, then realized I hadn't hit the record button. So now I'll just explain these three files that I've already made. And I'm going to have to explain the first 2 to 3 seconds like you don't know anything, just in case you don't, because you're going to see it a lot in the video. So make sure you pay attention in the first 3 minutes. First up, the database class. For now, it's going to stay minimal, but here's what it does. You'll notice it has the connection variable. We're going to use that anywhere inside our class and only inside because, it's marked as private. Secondly, let's jump into the constructor. This is our access point, guys. Whenever you create a class, just know this is where it gets executed first. As the name suggests, construct. This means you should prepare everything the class needs beforehand. As you can see in mine, we have this -connect. Now, this keyword means the variable or function belongs to this class. So as you can guess, this $connect refers the public function connect defined below. Now what's happening in the connect function? You'll see it's pulling some values from a class called envreader, right? Let's go back a little bit. I made this custom envreader class. Here it is. You can see it has its own functions. The first thing it does, look at its constructor. It finds the path to the .env file, assigns that path to a private variable, and then calls loadenv. That function uses this again, meaning it's inside the same class. Inside loadenv, it first checks if the file actually exists by checking the file path. Then it uses the built-in function parseIni file to convert everything inside the .env file into an array. So we have this .env file, right? What parseIni file does is it sets the first word as the key and the second word after the equals as the value, kind of like a key-value pair. We assign that array to the private variable you saw at the top, and we can access it by returning it using another public function we created, get. Before we go back to the database class, there's also this getInstance function. It's what's known as a singleton, I believe. So what does this function do? It first checks if the instance inside the class is null. If it is, then it creates a new instance and assigns it to the instance variable. That means when you call it a second time, it checks the instance and finds the already created class. So it doesn't create a new one. It just reuses the first instance. That's the singleton pattern. No matter how many times you try to create the class, it will always return the same one. It won't reinitialize. Now back to the database. This is how you call a singleton, or a static function in this case. We're calling envreader without new because it's static. Once it's initiated, the variable array inside envreader is populated with the data from the .env file. Now we use the get function inside envreader to pull values by passing the keys like dbname, dbuser, etc. Then we set up a new database connection and handle any error if it occurs. The connection is assigned to the connection variable inside this class, so we can use it anywhere within the class. You don't really need to know this part now, but the last function getConnection just returns that connection in case we want to use it directly for database functions. For now, that's our database and envreader classes. Now let's go to index.php. We'll treat this as our single route, so all traffic will go through here, hopefully. Don't worry about the CSRF token. You'll see an explanation for that later. So what we're doing here is preparing how data will be received, whether the request is a post or get type. Simply put, get shows up in the address bar. It usually causes the whole page to reload. Post sends data in the background. You don't see the page reload. Usually just one element updates. So that's the basic difference. Get and post just tell the server where the data is coming from. Now that we have everything ready, all class paths included, let's try loading our page. Cool, now, let's create the auth class. And here's today's free lesson. Well, I don't pay for Copilot, but these free hints it gives, honestly, they're enough for me. Anyway, the lesson is this. When you're using this in VS Code, right? It starts by guessing the class name based on your file name. Then it begins generating snippet hints, waiting for you to approve. But here's the thing, Copilot is just guessing what you might need. And for me, 100% of the time it has the right idea, but also 100% of the time the actual snippet it gives me is wrong. So that's why I write this comment documentation. Yes, this right here. It's called documentation, not just commenting. I use it to explain what the class does, as you can see here. I'm just preparing what I have in mind or what I expect myself to write. You can even include logic or structure in your explanation. Then what happens? All that time while you're writing, your file is being sent to Copilot's system in the background so it can figure out what to hint next. So what do you think happens next? Copilot reads that documentation and starts to understand the structure of the class or whatever you're building. But that's not enough though. You'll still need to review the code and add your own input. What the documentation does is it just gives Copilot a better starting point, and technically it's also good code practice. Now I'm just going to create some functions that I'll need right now in the auth class. Some functions we might add later, but for now, I'm just adding what I already have in mind and what I approve from Copilot. Oh, and you can actually see the syntax it gives for the database call. I don't know if that's PDO or what, but AI loves PDO for some reason, but not me. I love MySQLi just the way it is. So yeah, I'm changing that to MySQLi syntax. I'm actually thinking of maybe adding a custom query function later that can handle any kind of query, but that's for later. Yeah, so I made the auth class, added a bunch of functions. Now I'm going to make the auth controller class. It's supposed to act as a middleman between the auth class and the view. At least that's what it's supposed to do. But honestly, I don't know. I'm not really feeling it right now. Maybe I'll do it later. This is why I love using Laravel. But hey, we've got to learn sometimes, right? They say Laravel is batteries included, which basically means that most of the stuff I'm building here, Laravel already handles it for you, and then some. They'd say stuff like, well, it has an average level of security. You'll probably want to add more yourself. Pht. How modest of them. Anyway, I don't really like that it comes with a ton of boilerplate code, and yeah, I can open it fully when I SSH, but that's a whole other story for another day. Let's keep going. So here we've got this login, right? The actual logic is inside the auth class. Check it out. When it calls the login method from auth, it returns either true or false. Based on that, it prepares a JSON response. Now that JSON gets picked up by my JavaScript, either in the back end or it's sent directly to the client. I don't know which explanation will make more sense to you first, but either way, that logic is handled here. So the server can respond with one of three outcomes. 1, login successful, true. 2, login failed, but it still tells you how many retry attempts are left. 3, login blocked, when the number of allowed attempts has been reached. All right, let me fast forward a bit and show you how that logic looks in the back end. Okay, now we're going to create a default user. And while we're at it, I'm also creating that custom query function we talked about earlier. This function will take in a raw MySQLi query along with the values to bind. Then it's going to detect the value types, prepare the query, bind the parameters, and execute it. Depending on the type of query like insert, select, etc., it will return the appropriate result. So for example, if it's an insert, it'll return the new inserted ID. If it's a select, it'll return an array of data. For other commands like update or delete, we might just return true, false, or the number of affected rows. This one function is going to save us a lot of lines. Instead of having to 1, prepare the query, 2, bind the parameters, 3, execute it, 4, get the result, 5, fetch it, and so on. All those steps will now be handled automatically inside our custom query function. and we'll just call one simple line, passing in the SQL and the values, and get exactly what we expect in return, if there's anything to return. Now I'm making a log handler class called action logger. Client wants to see who's messing up his business and all that. Lol, I'm just joking. But seriously, I think this class is essential. So I'm going to build it in a way that it can be called anytime an important action is triggered. For example, adding users, deleting users, logging in, blocking users, and so on. This class will log all of that into a database table, so we have a record of what's happening in the system. Oh, and I also have this pattern I've been using in almost every class. What I try to do is, if the class depends on a specific table, I make sure it exists when the class is initialized. So inside the constructor, I check if the table exists. If it doesn't, I create it on the spot. Now, I know it doesn't feel optimal because that means every time a user triggers the class, it runs that check, which could become a performance issue if the system has a lot of users. So yeah, I've been thinking of how to optimize it. Maybe I'll move the check to get instance instead. Or even better, add a flag in the .env file that controls whether to run migrations or not. Like run migrations equals true. Then only when that's set to true, the table creation logic runs. I don't know yet. I'll figure it out. But can your AI tell you that? Sorry, that was a joke. Let's keep going. Now I'm creating a permissions class. My God, I already know how complicated this is going to get. I mean, usually we all go with simple permission logic, right? Like if the user is an admin, direct them here. If it's a normal user, direct them somewhere else. Or only show this button to admins, that kind of thing. But this time I want to go a bit deeper. I want to build it in a way where you can assign roles with just a few clicks of a button. Like this page renders on this user's dashboard. This user can read, this user can write, basic permission stuff, but not hard-coded roles. No more if role equals admin stuck everywhere. That's the dream. But man, if this gets too complicated, I'm ditching this part, I swear. But that'll be at the end of the project. For now, this class won't be doing much, just assigning roles to users, no real permission checks yet. Now I'm creating the access point and the route class. This time, I had to ask ChatGPT for the structure. Although, if you remember, I actually already made my own version at the start of this video. But then it started running into some path issues. So what I did was I pasted my code into ChatGPT and asked it to analyze it, maybe even criticize it. And yeah, it came back with an improved version that I actually liked. It had the logic separated into two clean files, one for the route class and one for the access point. Oh, but I don't mean the code worked right away. Nope, it still gave me the same path error, lol. The issue was that the files weren't being found when included, classic PHP path stuff. But eventually I figured it out. It was one of those moments where the path looks so right, but for some reason it just couldn't find the file. Anyway, once I solved that, I stuck with Chatty's cleaned up version of the code. It looked neat. So yeah, I think I've already explained a lot about this session and what I went through building all this. At this point, I've got most of the core classes done. So now I'll just speed things up a bit and go over what we have so far and explain each part briefly as I go. So now I was building auto login, where it logs in automatically when the user chose Remember Me during their last login. Remember we made our website have just one access point? Yeah, so the logic was try auto login before sending the user to login, which caused this. Yeah, I knew exactly what that meant. An infinite loop. So what was happening? The code kept going to the access point, check if user has auto login. Nope, they don't. Send them to login. And where's login? Same access point. Then it would do the same thing again and again and again. Infinite loop. But I fixed that. Now it can give warnings on retries, log into the admin dashboard or the client dashboard, and the Remember Me works fine. Even when you close your browser and open it again, it takes you straight to the dashboard without logging in. And this is where the recording ended. Next, we'll be dealing with reset, generating a code, sending it to the registered email with a link, and giving them access to reset their password. Easy peasy. But before we end the video, guys, I miscalculated this. Like and subscribe. Turns out it's hard to code and then make a video after. Like and subscribe. It takes about a day just to prepare a single video, which I think might delay the actual build. So I was thinking if you can find it in your thumb to like and subscribe and wait for me. I'm still going to be recording the process, but I think I'll just keep the recordings for now. And within a month or two, I'll be done with this project. And I can start releasing like and subscribe, comment.